Is this thing working? Hare Krishna. We've had a lot of trouble with the amplification. Okay. Sorry, I got completely wrapped up in Vyasa Puja book. Bhakti Swami, he started a whole cow retirement farm in Orlando. Did you know that? Just like 2 weeks ago. Bhakti Swami. You know about it?
I heard they were planning on doing something, right?
Yeah. I was there in Alatra when he did it. I missed him. He's supposed to go to St. Augustine Martha Yatra, but he didn't show up. I want to visit next time I go to Alatra. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari James Tabad Paramahansa Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Page 557. On this 24th day of April 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. And we're on text 25, top of page 557. Top of 557. You have a different book. You have a different book. The one book left that has a different pagination. You understand what it is. Text 25, chapter 13. Damodar, can you turn this light up all the way? I have a feeling it's not quite up all the way. And turn them all up. It helps. The light comes this way, so I can see better. Thank you. Dhyaner atmani pushyanti kechadatmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare chapter 13, text 25. Got it? 13, 25. You're in chapter 13? 25. Dhyanena atmani pashyanti kechanatmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare dhyanena atmani pashyanti kechadatmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Go ahead now. Sorry, Parashakti. Dhyane atmani pashyanti kechadatmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Or Jayashri, can you do? Dhyane atmani pashyanti kechad atmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Marcy. Dhyanin atmani pashyanti kechad atmanam atmana anye sankyena yogena karma yogena chapare. Damodar. Dhyanen atmani pashyanti kechad atmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Jamal. Dhyanen atmani pashyanti kechadatmanam atmana anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Translation. Some perceive the Supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruit of results. Purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into two classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned. Those who are atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced fruit of results. Those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding, because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Supersoul in everyone, the all-pervading Godhead. Of course, there are those who try to understand the Supreme Absolute Truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze this material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that above the individual soul there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus gradually they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruit of results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the Supersoul by meditation, and when they discover the Supersoul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated. Similarly, there are others who also try to understand the Supreme Soul by cultivation of knowledge, And there are others who cultivate the Hatha Yoga system and who try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by childish activities. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we're getting to the end of this chapter gradually. And here Krishna is describing, again going back to our format, which Arjuna said at the very beginning, he asked a question with 6 parts. He wanted to know what is the Chaitra, what is the Chaitra Gya, what is the Prakriti, what is the Purusha, and what is the knowledge, and what is the final goal of knowledge. And Krishna is systematically answering those, and it turns out that the goal of knowledge is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here described as the Purusha in text 24, the Super Soul, Upadrashta Anumanta, and back in text 23 we got a little summary of who the Super Soul is. In this body there's another transcendental enjoyer. In other words, there's 2 souls, the individual soul and the Super Soul. And he is the Bhokta, transcendental enjoyer. He's the Lord, Maheshwara, the Supreme Proprietor, Bharta, who exists as the overseer and permitter. That's the Upadrashta and the Anumanta. So we have a nice little summary of the Super Soul here. One way in which he maintains this will is by giving every living entity the intelligence to act in this specific body. As he says in the 15th chapter, from me, I am within every body in the heart. Sarva sichaham mridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanancha. I'm in everyone's heart as the Super Soul, and from me come knowledge and forgetfulness and also remembrance. So that knowledge that he gives is what's needed for each individual soul to act in his specific body. If someone is in a dog's body, he doesn't need the knowledge of medicine and technology and everything. He needs to know where is food, where is sex, how do I cozy up to this owner so they'll take care of me, and all these different things. There's knowledge needed, intelligence. He provides it. So, but we in human form of life, we have a higher goal. We should have a higher goal than the animals. And that is to achieve self-realization, to actually break out of the bonds of birth and death. So that means deceiving God, developing our relationship or reviving our relationship with God. And it begins with the Super Soul who provides us knowledge and both internally and externally. You remember how he provides knowledge externally, Damodar? What's one way that he does it? Yeah, through the gurus actually, the instructing spiritual master, and also through the books. Yeah. Acharya Chaitya Vapusha. This is a beautiful verse by Uddhava. You may have heard it before. It's always ever fresh. He's speaking to Krishna in the Uddhava Gita. One of these verses that encourages Krishna to keep on speaking. And he says, "Oh my Lord, naivopayanti pachatim kabayastavesha brahmayushaprikratnam mridna mudak smaranta yontar bahis tanubutam ashabang vidunvan acharya chaitya vapusha swagatim vyanakti." Very wonderful verse. He says, "My dear Lord, even if the learned sages, learned devotees, had a lifetime of Brahma, they could not sufficiently express their gratitude to you. Because they understand that you appear in 2 ways, internally and externally, antar and externally, in antar bahith, tanubhutam." Every word is important, but I heard him say that every word is significant. Sanskrit, it's a pack so tight, Tanubhutam means those who are bearing the burden of a material body. We're all tanubhutams. And in one verse, I forget which one it is, he describes Arjuna as the best of the bearers of bodies. In other words, the best of the embodied souls. He praises him. So, Tanubhatam, Ashubhang Vadunvan, you appear internally and externally in order to cleanse away Ashubha, the Ashubha, which is the same thing as anartas and uncleanliness. In other words, to purify them. How? Acharya Chaitya Vapusha, in the form of the Chaitya Guru. Chaitya Guru is the Super Soul, and the Acharya is the external Guru. So that's the same Krishna appearing as the Super Soul and as the Gurus in order to help us. And what does he do? Swagatim Vyanakti. This Krishna in these forms, he shows the path back to you. Swagatim Vyanakti. Very nice. So one has to somehow perceive the Super Soul. Now the normal way is first through the ears. You perceive the Super Soul by hearing his external manifestation, through the pure devotees and through the pure Shastra. So here Krishna is giving some other ways that one can perceive him. Meditation, cultivation of knowledge, and working without fruit of desires. So each of these actually we participate in. As bhaktas, we have a form of meditation. We certainly cultivate knowledge, that's why we're sitting here. And we try to work without fruit of desires. I can't conceive how anyone can work without fruit of desires without being a devotee. I mean, it's hard enough to work without fruit of desires being a devotee. But here Krishna is saying, and then the next verse is really for us. The next verse is more like how we can perceive the Super Soul, through hearing. But the point is that this is the goal. This is what all of this cultivation of knowledge is about, the goal of knowledge. Just understanding your soul is a very essential first step, but it's not enough. It's not enough just to know that I'm a spirit. You have to know how to act as a spirit in this world. Otherwise, you're bound to get overwhelmed by the modes of nature. That's the problem with the impersonal realization. It's inconceivable. As devotees, you know, we're so fortunate. We walk into the temple and we're surrounded with transcendence. Today I was just walking around the temple, which I don't usually do, but I think I'm going to do it more. And that is chanting my rounds. Those wonderful 2 hours, 5:15 to 7:15. And I was looking at each of these pictures. And I was realizing, you know, each one of them, as Prabhupada said, they're windows to the spiritual world. And the important part is they're painted by devotees. Very important point. Most of you don't remember. Those who, you may remember Parashakti, when all of a sudden all the temples in North America, a lot of them were selling paintings to try to raise money because book distribution was down and all this stuff. You remember that? In the early 80s. And it's still going on to some degree. So they had access to Korean painters. They seem to be all in Korea. Maybe now they're in China also. But they developed, you know, the skill to be able to paint fairly well. And they would paint who knows what, you know, seascapes and the forest, something that people would buy to put on their walls. And in this way, a big market developed for these cheap little Korean paintings, which, you know, they could paint them for $5 and sell them for $10, and then you could get $100 if you get in a. So I remember Janmashtami Prabhu. Yeah, some of you know Janmashtami. You remember Janmashtami? He was the president of Denver at one point. He spent a lot of time in Mayapur, setting up the Mayapur Institute of Higher Education, parallel to the Vrindavan Institute. Now he's in Alachua doing the same thing. He just had a hip replacement. He's getting older. So he was huge. He did $30,000 profit 1 month. Yeah, in selling these paintings, supporting the New York Temple or the Philadelphia Temple, I guess. So anyway, they started. So they thought, well, why don't we get him to paint some pictures of Krishna, and we could put them on the walls, you know, because it's very difficult to get an original, you know, in those days, and it wasn't so easy to do the prints in those days. This is like early '80s. So I remember. I think it was in Philadelphia. They had gotten one of these Koreans to paint a picture of Krishna. You know, 3-fold bending period. What is that? You know, it just didn't have the, you know, there was no bhakti in there. You don't want this on the wall, you know. And here's an even more amazing story about this. Because one of the best artists, you remember Muralidhar. You remember Muralidhar? Who doesn't know Muralidhar? There's probably paintings in here by Muralidhar. I forget which one. Yes, that famous painting. He did that in New Vrindavan. That's a classic painting. But the detail, I mean, they went to Italy. They sent him to Italy to spend a year to learn the techniques of how to, you know, paint so realistically. So Muralidhar Prabhu was this, you know, wonderful devotee in Brooklyn. He had a child there, and he would bring the child and, you know, show the deities, and he would paint all day, and he was doing all this wonderful service. Then he went to New Vrindavan. And New Vrindavan kind of a difficult spot. Anyway, he left us, basically, unfortunately. But he didn't stop being an artist. You know, he's still using that. He made money as a site. I won't tell you what it is. But my friend Indra Pramad, he had one of his paintings that was an exact replica of a famous painting. One of the most famous paintings was Krishna with his hand in the jar looking at you, you know, and the yogurt and butter is overflowing. You know, it's like the complaints. If you look at you read the 10th canto, you'll find there's a series of complaints by the elder gopis. And they're complaining to Mother Yashoda. They came over just so they'd see Krishna. And they're complaining, he's stealing our butter, you know, and yogurt from our houses. You have to stop him. And so we don't know how he does it. There's some light, you know, that he illuminates. We keep it dark, and you know they're complaining like that. So this Krishna, and he's looking at them, you know, and then eventually they melt. You know, their hearts melt, and then. So it's a great painting, one of my favorites of all time. It's just so exquisite. So this painting, I think, sold for $5,000 for some original, some fellow in Bombay. It's hanging on his wall somewhere. So Dravida Prabhu, he felt that, well, you know, this is a popular painting, maybe I'll just copy it, and then I can sell it, you know, and make a few $1,000s. So he did another version of it. It was smaller, but it, you know, looked like every brush stroke was copied, you know, it looked exactly like it. And he gave it to Indra to see if he could sell. It's still hanging on Indra's wall, he never sold it. But if you look carefully at that painting, it doesn't have the same kind of effect. Because at that time when he painted it, he wasn't chanting and doing the thing, you know. It was that all the technique was there, but the bhakti wasn't there. And yeah. And so, but these paintings were all painted. I know the devotees who painted them and when they painted them, you know. So they have a tremendous effect, you know. You chant Hare Krishna and you look, and it's like, it's hard for us me to conceive, okay, now, you know, we're not going to do any of this chanting and all of this stuff, and we're just going to meditate, and this way achieve the super soul. It's impossible to conceive of that. How can someone even, you know, think that they can transcend? I mean, there's a verse by the demigods, Prabhu would quote it all the time, how the impersonalists really can't achieve a secure place in the spiritual world. It says, Krishna's in the womb, and Devaki, the demigods appear incognito, and they offer these prayers. Chapter 2 of the 10th canto. And one of the prayers, the only one I know, is that Ye and Ye Aravindaksha Vimuktamaninas Tvayashta Bhavad Avishuddha Buddhaya Aruha Kutrena Padang Padang Tata Patyam Tyadho Anadvita Yushmat Angraya. So they're saying, besides the devotees, there are others, my Lord, my lotus-enabled Lord, Aravindaksha Vimuktamaninas, who think themselves liberated after performing severe austerities to suppress the senses, because try to imagine what it's like to try to achieve Brahman. You have to empty the mind. You can't think of anything. As soon as you think of anything, that's a fall down. That's material, because any variety of things is material, and that's the big, you know, fallacy of the Mayavadis. Krishna Prasadam, Krishna's form, Krishna's Leela, the activities, devotees, it's all Maya because you're acting with your senses. So by great effort, they try to get up to suppress the senses. A few maybe can do it for a while, and empty the mind out so that you can perceive the Brahman, the one, the light and everything. So Aruha Kutrena, the difficult austerities, they rise up. Aruha means to rise up, to the Parampadam. Parampadam here is Brahmabhuta, with no details. Parampadam patantyado. But they fall down again because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So it's explicitly said in many places, and right in the Bhagavatam, Rishabdev, Priti Niyavan Mai Vasudeve, Namuchate Dehi Yogena Tavad. Without attaining love for me, Vasudev, he's directly revealing that he's the incarnation there. There is no liberation from bondage to a material body. In other words, you can't be liberated without bhakti. So here we are, and we walk into the temple, we're surrounded by transcendence. There's the deities, there's the pictures, the sound of the kirtans going on. And you're immediately uplifted if you're receptive to it. So that's what Krishna describes. But here he says, you know, those who are successful in meditation, and cultivation of knowledge and working without fruit of desires can perceive the super soul. But the next verse he describes how others can perceive who can't do these three processes, are not really directly involved in that, apart from bhakti, but they hear. And that's where we come in. So let's do text 26. Anye tvevam ajananta shutvanebhya upasate tepi chatataram jeva mityung shuti parayanaha. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. This is really where we're at. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there's no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Sound familiar? This is where we live. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially, according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men and women should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative knowledge. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. So this is really a relief, kind of, because can you imagine trying to understand the super soul by these other means? But here is very much, and the word upasate, notice that this verse has the word upasate, worship. The previous verse, it's all kind of technical. Okay, work without fruit of results. All of those results? Can I keep some for myself? I got to pay the rent. Yes, but only just enough for the rent. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Meditation? Yeah, right. Not in this age. And then cultivate knowledge. What does that mean? Cultivate knowledge means to come to Bhagavad Gita class. So we're back to hearing. Anyway, this is Chatataranja Mrityu Shruti Parayana. So this dedicated to hearing, this Shruti Parayana, this word Parayana is very nice. You can easily memorize this one little phrase, and it'll help you. Narayana Parayana. Narayana Parayana. Yes, simply, it rhymes and everything. Be dedicated fully to Narayan. That's a Narayana Parayana. So here is Shruti Parayana, dedicated to hearing. So hearing is foundational. And Ati Tarantyeva, they will certainly transcend death. In other words, this is the way to liberation for us. So it all starts with hearing from the right source. This is the key. And people are hearing like anything. But to be able to hear from the right source, that's what Prabhupada gave us. No one else was giving the pure, unadulterated knowledge, the vibration. Who else? Yes, Allen Ginsberg preceded Prabhupada in chanting Hare Krishna in the West. It's true. But he wasn't like making devotees. He had no philosophy. He didn't know what he was doing. It was good that he was chanting, and Prabhupada, he very skillfully engaged him. Famous man. Hey, and George Harrison was even better. He was actually a devotee ultimately, pretty much. But so it was very valuable that they were doing it. But without Prabhupada, it would have just, who knows what would have happened. It would have just been another fad, But it wasn't a fad. Prabhupada, he himself personified the knowledge and the realization, and if someone came in the orbit, and you see, and it was a perfectly intelligent, super intelligent way of doing it. Just chant, just get him chanting. That was the main thing. Chanting and taking prasadam. Go out in the park, chant for hours. That alone was a spectacle. You've seen the pictures. I was there. There was always something going on, and people were gathering and watching this and that. And here, unfortunately, I wasn't there on the days Prabhupada came. I could have been, but I missed it. And so, here's this Indian gentleman, you've seen the picture with tremendous intensity. Obviously, he's in a space where no one else is, he's beating, and there's these young guys, pants, dancing, Look, sure, people gather around. And some of them participated in the chanting. A few went back to the storefront, and a few of those stayed around and became influenced and purified, and those became the first devotees. They're fortunate souls, but it could have been anybody. And from that, the seed is planted. Sincere hearing, purification, and then the books are coming, you have more foundation of knowledge, and that's what we're sitting here. And we can actually transcend death. We want to try to get serious about that. As you get older, it's kind of like no more theoretical. When you're 21, 25, yeah, birth, old age, disease, and death. Yeah, I know about that. And now it's like, yeah, it's coming. And we have full faith that, death is just a passage, it's not the end of everything. But do we really want to take birth again from a womb? I mean, no, if you think about it, it says, no, I don't want to do that. But are we ready to do A, B, C, D, F, G, H to actually avoid doing that? That's the problem. That's where we have to become determined. Okay, any questions on this first? Yes, Prabhu.
So in this verse in particular, at 26, so if you come to, say in my case, I came to the temple without, let's say, an extensive knowledge in the whole philosophy.
Not unusual.
And so that wouldn't be considered sentiment to begin to worship Krishna without...
It wouldn't be considered what?
Considered just pure...
Sentiment?
Without having all of the proper...
The point is, it doesn't matter how, how you come. In other words, if you just come to, and by the way, we try to encourage you to worship, to wear the tilak in the temple. Yeah, it washed off many hours ago. The point is, it doesn't matter how. Prabhupada, where he was suggested to him, he didn't think, inspiration came for him, but it was suggested, Srila Prabhupada, in America, people have Sunday dinners. They get together and eat Sunday. Okay, well, let's have a Sunday dinner. And that's how the Sunday feast started. And people came, many people came for the feast, and or they would come for the kirtan, because the kirtan was really far out, and and you got caught up in it, and it was music, there's music, this is a big thing going. So that was an attraction, and the feast was an attraction. Lecture, not so much. People would come for the kirtan, and then they would get up when Prabhupada started speaking, and that happened too. So Prabhupada, he was adamant. He didn't, get offended. He just keep going. He had one person to speak to. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's understood. In one sense, that was the advantage of coming to America. Nobody knew anything about anything, right? And it was a time, a cultural time when there was a lot of experimentation going on, various kinds of experimentation. But part of it was searching. Deep inside there was a search. Maybe they're searching to get back to their last acid trip or something. But there was a search. And there was the foundations, because the biggest barrier really to Krishna consciousness is you have very strong traditions in a place. This is why you can't go near the Muslim countries. I mean, besides they'll arrest you. But there's a lot of. I mean, now of course there's a lot of with the internet and travel and everything. The things are moving, but in America at that time, there was just all this cultural ferment. You had young people really renouncing material comforts. It was a special time. After the war, there was a huge boom that went on. That's why you have the baby boom, you know. And I remember where I lived, Levittown was built. There's a whole development, hundreds and I don't know, thousands of little houses. They even made a song about it, ticky-tacky. You remember that? I don't want to live in the ticky-tacky home. Maybe your home is exactly the same. You know, because these kids, they grew up in fairly opulence, you know. And so they weren't conscious of like the wolf at the door, you know, like poverty. You know, there weren't a lot of homeless people walking around, you know. So anyway, it was a certain time, and they had the luxury of thinking about philosophy and what's the goal of life, and let's just go off and hitchhike to California, you know. And then after a few years, they all basically almost all came back and, you know, tried to get a job, and Dad, can you help me out? And the reality set in. But in that period, there was this incredible openness, and so Prabhupada came there. But how, you know, why someone started chanting, or it doesn't matter. That's okay. It's what happens after you come into the Sangha that counts. Are you open to really exploring? And you know, that's what. So, you know, anyone and everyone, we used to give out these cards. Chant Hare Krishna and your life will be sublime. There's not much philosophy on there. And there's the devotees, you know, all out on the street, blissful, you know, say, well, I'll try it, you know. Some people would, you know, and that's how it spread. So it still spreads that way. Somehow or other. Prabhupada would always quote this verse, Yena kena upayena mana krishnena veshyat, which is kind of a little riff on a verse in the Bhagavatam. It says, somehow or other, place your mind on Krishna. Through lust, through anger, you know, through devotion. Somehow or other, you just think of Krishna, and then everything will follow from that. Krishna will purify. We heard this morning, you remember that verse about Putana? Somehow or other, she was meditating on Krishna, and she was performing a service, suckling him, you know, with poison. But poison didn't bother him, he killed her, you know. But he accepted her service as a nurse, and he made her a nurse in the spiritual world. So we can also take that model. Okay, so we will resume in text 27 tomorrow, which is Ekadashi, by the way. So you can expect me to be even more talkative and crazy after a day of fasting. So brace yourself. It happens every time. Something happens to the brain, you know, without as much glucose. So that's what goes on. So today we'll continue with Krishna book. We'll make this Krishna book week, and then next week Nectar Devotion. Is that okay? All right. Okay. So we are now, Krishna has killed Kamsa, and he visited, who did he visit first? Remember? He promised to visit two people who he met when he first came into the town. Yes, Kubja. By the way, that's Prabhupada's name. I mean, you don't find that in the text. It's Trivakra. But Kubja, I think, means one with the humpback. So that must be the washerman he killed. But he left Akrura and promised to visit him later, and then he met Kubja. She wanted to take him home after he straightened her up, but she said, "No, I have the business to attend to. Then I'll see you later." So that was. So now we're at the point where he's going to visit Akrura. This is still chapter 49. I forget. After a while, Krishna fulfilled his promise to visit Akrura at his house. Akrura was in relationship with Krishna as his servitor, and Krishna wanted to get some service from him. He went there accompanied by Lord Balaram and Uddhava. When Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava approached the house of Akrura, Akrura came forward, embraced Uddhava, and offered respectful obeisances, bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balaram. Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava offered him obeisances in turn, and were offered appropriate sitting places. When all were comfortably seated, Akrura washed their feet and sprinkled the water on his head. I have to confess, for the first time in all of my 45 years, I was forced to have my feet bathed when I went to Columbus. What an experience. Thank God I cut my toenails before I went over there. Anyway, it's quite an experience. I don't recommend it. When all Akrura washed their feet, sprinkled the water on his head, when he offered nice clothing, flowers, and sandalwood pulp in regular worship, then he offered these things. Nice clothing, flowers, sandalwood. All three of them were very satisfied by Akrura's behavior. Akrura then bowed down before Krishna, putting his head on the ground. Then placing Krishna's lotus feet on his lap, Akrura gently began to massage them. When Akrura was fully satisfied in the presence of Krishna and Balaram, his eyes filled with tears of love for Krishna, and he began to offer his prayers as follows. This is like fourth or fifth set of prayers. You can read through. He had a whole set, several sets. Well, first when he's going to Vrindavan, and then when he's coming from Vrindavan to Mathura in the Yamuna. You remember he stops there and he has this vision of Sankirtan and Balaram. And he offers these beautiful prayers. Now another set of prayers. This is why he is the exemplar for prayers. Vandanam. My dear Lord Krishna and Balaram, it's very kind of you to have killed Kamsa and his associates. You have delivered the whole family of the Yadu dynasty from the greatest calamity. The Yadus will always remember your saving of their great dynasty. My dear Lord Krishna and Balaram, both of you are the original personality from whom everything has emanated, the original cause of all causes. You have inconceivable energy, and you are all pervasive. There is no cause and effect, gross or subtle, but you. You are the Supreme Brahman, realized through the study of the Vedas. By your inconceivable energy, you are actually visible before us. You create this cosmic manifestation by your own potencies, and you enter into it yourself. As the five material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are distributed in everything manifested by different kinds of bodies, so you alone enter the various bodies created by your own energy. You enter the body as the individual soul and independently as the supersoul. Close quote. Prabhupada explains, it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that the material body is created by Krishna's inferior energy, that the living entities, the individual souls, are his parts and parcels, and that the supersoul is his localized representation. Thus, while the material body, the living entity, and the supersoul constitute an individual living being, originally they are all different energies of the one Supreme Lord. Akrura continued, in the material world, you create, maintain, and dissolve the whole manifestation by the interactions of the three material qualities, namely, goodness, passion, and ignorance. But you are not implicated in the activities of those material qualities, for your supreme knowledge is never overcome like the knowledge of the individual living entity. Prabhupada explains, the Supreme Lord enters the material cosmos and causes creation, maintenance, and destruction in their due course, whereas the part and parcel living entity enters the material elements and has his material body created for him. The difference between the living entity and the Lord is that the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and has the tendency to be overcome by the interactions of the material qualities. Krishna, the Para Brahman or the Supreme Brahman, being always situated in full knowledge, is never overcome by such activities. Therefore, Krishna is called Achyuta, meaning he who never falls down. Now, what word did Prabhupada give a special meaning to describe Achyuta? This word is often accompanying when he speaks about Achyuta. Infallible, which he would pronounce as infallible. Infallible. He gave it a new meaning. We're going to have a glossary in all the books we print now, with meanings of words that Prabhupada used, especially, like the word sufficiently. Sufficiently, also, sometimes means abundantly, and I've explained this before. Inebrieties, it means negativities. There's actually no plural in dictionary of the word inebriety. It's just a state of being, Anyway. So, Achyuta, meaning he who never falls down. Krishna's knowledge of his spiritual identity is never overcome by material action, whereas the minute part and parcel living entities are prone to forget their spiritual identity due to material action. The individual living entities are eternally part and parcel of God, minute sparks of the original fire, Krishna. As sparks are prone to be extinguished, but not the blazing fire, so the living entities can be overcome by material activities, whereas Krishna never can. Akrura continued, less intelligent men misunderstand your transcendental form to be made of material energy. But that concept is not at all applicable to you. Actually, you are all spiritual, and there's no difference between you and your body. Therefore, there's no question of your being conditioned or liberated. You are ever liberated in any condition of life. as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, only fools and rascals consider you an ordinary man. You know, who knows the verse? You know this one. The scholar. Zach the scholar. Avadananti mamudha manushim tanamashatam parambab majananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools and rascals deride me when I appear in human form, unaware of my supreme nature, dominion over all that being. Yeah. To consider your lordship one of us, conditioned by the material nature, is a mistake due to our imperfect knowledge. When people deviate from the original knowledge of the Vedas, they try to identify the ordinary living entities with your lordship, who have appeared on this earth in your original form to re-establish the real knowledge that the living entities are neither one with nor equal to the Supreme God. My dear Lord, you are always situated in uncontaminated goodness, Shuddha Sattva. Your appearance is necessary to re-establish actual Vedic knowledge, as opposed to the atheistic philosophy that tries to establish that God and the living entities are one and the same. My dear Lord Krishna, this time you have appeared in the home of Vasudeva as his son with your plenary expansion, Sri Balaram. Your mission is to kill all the atheistic royal families and destroy their huge military strength. You've advented yourself to minimize the burden of the world, and to fulfill this mission, you've glorified the dynasty of Yadu by appearing as one of its members. And we will pick that up tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for listening. So this is great. You were able to attend the class? Or Jayashri? You were able to attend the class because they're doing the service. Is that it?
This is extra.
Oh, that's extra.
Yes, it's in the service today.
So you're,
We have so many flowers right now.
Lots of flowers are there, so they made the bouquet or something.
Yeah,
Small.
so the garlands are already done.
Yeah.
Very good. But I have a question. Do any of those flowers have any fragrance at all?
Yasam Vikrasabharam Vikrasabharam.
I don't know.
But we
Take your learn from verses. Huh? Take your verse from as you learn verses. They said such and such chapter.
Jai Krishna Shri Radha Hari Jai Krishna Krishna Prestaya Purvasade Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Virinamate Namaste
The Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Is Kami Vidikambaracharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Prabhupada Paramahamsa Bhaktivedanta Swami Divine Grace, the Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Anant Kokti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Bhagavan Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shankar Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Mudi Maya Gurdhan ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Ganga Mahi ki Jai. Yamuna Mahi ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the Son of the Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the Son of the Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the Son of the Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Guru and Gauranga.
All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Namaste Narayana. Namaste Narayana.
Oh, he goes to the...
I thought you guys had asked him. Yeah.
Bob.
It takes a toll on your brain.
I know.
Morning.
The serving spoon. You had very hard? Well, there's all right, any customers?
Red wine with
I
the
got one. Would you like some? No. I'm doing the genies on the morning. Okay. Yeah.
I usually stick that here, yeah, whatever they
No, me and Ryan.
And an active.
Me and Ryan. Yeah. Sometimes, but usually just incense and books and Krishna. Oh, Kevin does Wednesday. No. Sometimes we used to go. Yeah. Yeah. They want us to. It's very nice.
And then you get any kids to stop by and
Yeah, they come, sometimes we get in cars, they come to Krishna and that sort of stuff. We've had a few kids who are becoming like devotees from the and we're starting a club. Yeah, the club.
Yeah, I booked it. Yes, you did.
Yeah, it's such a difference. But what I did, I polished the Prabhupada's cut.
Yeah, like a small Krishna on campus.
No.
So that's going to be.
Oh, yes. You can see them.
Yeah, they've got actually quite a lot of kids on campus who are like becoming devotees. So like
But did
Krishna.
you see I have a certain device with the head of it? You can just use the, there's a silver polish. I used to actually do it.
They're bringing prashad.
Well, the other thing, well, the personal thing, do we have a backup shower? So if you shampoo it, you need it takes. I mean, here I'll take days to dry.
There's a rickety one that we brought to
You know the
Ravi.
Oh, okay.
It kind of feels like my finger that doesn't work so well anymore. It's like, it feels like it's broken, but then if you push it, it goes back into
That's fine. More puri.
That's why I don't like cartels too much. But, yeah, it works. It feels like it's gonna fall.
Haribo.